Today is the September 24th. It's like voting day here in Germany. I obviously am not voting because you have to have a German passport. Yeah. But Remo is, obviously. It's a little different here in Germany rather than voting in the US. You don't necessarily vote for the person, you vote for the party.
You have two votes, so to say.
We are going to the city to vote, and I'm gonna be Remo's support. Yay!
About the two-vote thing. The first vote is not as important. It is only for a regional representative that you vote for. And the second vote is for Bundestag, which is also then later gonna determine who's gonna be the chancellor. Which is most likely this time Angela Merkel again.
Yeah, and the Bundestag is like the parliament that meets, that makes the decisions, and then goes on a countrywide level. Yeah.
This was the first time that I voted in Germany, because before I was always gone. And yeah, I actually never voted via like letter, like never did it. I'm excited to see tonight what's, you know, how it went today for the different parties.
Yeah. Okay. Hello.
Hey guys.
Remo obviously is married to an American, and he also spent about 5 years in the US, so he knows Americans pretty well. Obviously I do too. We have a funny little story that happened to us a few days ago. So it was raining outside. I came home from my class. In order to come home from class, you have to walk through like this green belt area, and there's like a pathway with dirt. And it had just rained, and I come home from class, and me and Remo were about to leave again to go to the city to run some errands.
So the other day we were on the way to the bank. It had rained, and Bree was like, "Oh, there's a foot of mud. You know, you should probably switch your shoes." And I was like, "A foot of mud? Like that's like this much?" And I was like, "Dang it!" And I was like, "That's so unreasonable." And so I just went with my normal shoes, and then we got here, and I looked like about like this. You see some mud over there, but the streets are fine. And that is what you have to know to understand Americans, is that they just exaggerate.
And so then Remo was like, okay, this is so funny. And he was like, I have been thinking that there are a few things that Americans tend to do, and we realized not every American does this. This is more of a tendency thing. And so he was rattling off a few that he thought, and I was like, oh, this is so funny and so true. We should do this on the vlog.
And this is gonna help you understand Americans, because when you first go there, or when you first interact with Americans who come to Germany, you might end up like having some misunderstandings.
Yeah. Also, just a little disclaimer, we love Americans. I'm American. I have an American family. This isn't to say we hate Americans. This is just something funny that Remo had pointed out and I thought was really cool.
Yeah, it's all about differences in culture. That doesn't mean that we think that one is better than the other.
Yeah.
And it goes both ways, so.
Yeah.
So Bree obviously exaggerated there with the mud, but she also like thought that I would understand that and get that right way. Americans do exaggerate a lot, but obviously they say it in the right context, but you can misunderstand it as a German very easily. An example that I had when I first moved to the US, my roommates in the US, my first like apartment that I moved into with like three other guys, actually 5, but yeah, it doesn't matter. 2 of them bought like a bunch of ramen, like a ton. And they told everyone, hey, you can all eat of this, you know, like it's for everyone. And I was like, oh sweet, that's really nice, because like obviously I was like saving money because I just moved to the US, and I ate a ton of them. And then later on we were like at a party with like some faculty there and everything. And we talked to one of my professors, and they told him, oh yeah, the German dude, like Remo, he ate all of our ramen. And I was like, you guys, you said I could, you know, and I misunderstood them.
It was like a friendly way of saying you can have some, you know, you're welcome to have some, we're friends. But it was like kind of understood to them anyways that, you know, only one. And literally, that's something that all of Americans say, I feel like on Parks and Rec.
That idea is literally the greatest idea I have ever heard in my life.
Turning that the other way around, for Americans, if a German tells them, you know, you can have some of these, they might think they're not really supposed to eat any of those, but Germans actually mean that. They mean like, yeah, like have some, you know, and might even be offended if you don't have some just because they offer it.
So our second point is the way that Americans and Germans greet each other. So funny story, when back in college, I took like a little German class in college. One of the first things that my teacher said to us was about the German culture was you should never go up to a German on the street and say, hey, wie geht's dir, like, or Ihnen. Like in the US, you would say, how are you, to everyone. Like, hey, how are you? Hey, how are you? Hey, no matter if you're friends or not. Because in German, if you say that to a German, you're gonna get the long story of how they are, you know? My cat ran away, my dog ran away. It's more of who you're talking to. If you just talk to someone random on the street and you say, how are you? It's not unusual, but they'll usually just say, okay, good, good. It's always good. But if it's like family member like Tarimo or someone that I know really well and I say how are you, I really mean how are you, and I want to know how you are, you know.
When I first came to the US, I actually didn't know that, and I did answer a few times like how are you, and I just like went on a tangent and got weird looks, like, yeah.
The next point that we have, and we've talked about this a little bit before, about how Germans are a little more direct than Americans. One little example I have is in my life, I've noticed that usually like when Americans make plans with each other, you talk to someone and you're like, yeah, let's hang out, let's do lunch. Oh, okay. And then if it happens or not, you don't really know, you know, like you don't really make a plan yet. Does that make sense? Like, yeah,
it's like less binding than in Germany.
Yeah.
I just think the general trend here is that Americans are more friendlier, but it doesn't mean necessarily that they're nicer than Germans. And so Americans often, I think, can misunderstand Germans by being unfriendly.
Yeah.
Like when I was first in the US, somebody asked me if I'm from New York City, and I was like, oh, why would he ask me that, you know, like, and I went to some guy and asked him, why did he say that? And he was like, oh yeah, he thinks that you're a douche, like, because people from New York City are a little more like direct, like the Germans are in a way.
I think also that in the US, friendships are easier, it's easier to get friends, but your friendships don't always last as long. In Germany, it takes a lot longer to make friends, I would say, but when you do make friends, you make friends for life.
Yeah.
So you think, and that's not to say that in the US you don't make friends for life, you do that, but just in my experience,
and you don't always make friends for life in Germany either. Bingo on.
So isn't it funny how in Germany you answer the phone with your name, like Arndt or Remo, and
how do you do it in the US?
You say hello, 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 which I think is so dumb, like hello?
I kind of can't remember where we were at. One more thing that we thought of, but that we can't quite explain, it's like kind of a little harder, and that is sarcasm.
What is it?
Sarcasm. That's not how you say it?
Sorry. It's how you say it in British English, yeah.
How do you say it in English?
Sarcasm.
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 Humor in general is very complicated and very cultural, like very founded in the culture. Can you say that?
Yeah.
Like based in the culture. It's very closely knitted to the culture, and I had it a lot that when I went to the US that I didn't get American sarcasm, and I also know from Americans like Bree, when they're here, they often don't get the sarcasm.
Yeah, for instance, Remo's family is very like humorous and makes jokes a lot, and I sometimes have a hard time following along just because I'm used to a different sort of sarcasm, and they'll say something to me and they're totally kidding or they're just being sarcastic, and I take them seriously every time, and Remo's like, it's a joke. It's a joke. Like, and vice versa. My parents are also very sarcastic. It's also been the other way around where Remo, like, it took him a second. I think he's better at catching on. He's just more
Well,
used
I've been
to
there a while, but at the beginning it was really hard, and I think a lot of jokes just went right over my head, and I was like, oh, you guys are weird, like, or something like that.
Oh, does he really think that? Like, yeah, it is. And we were trying to figure out maybe why, and neither of us could put our finger onto like what is so different about the sarcasm, like if it's more irony is the sarcasm, or like
maybe one of you guys can explain that better.
Yeah.
But in general I think you just have to be careful with that. In general, like with all like different cultures, humor is like something that you have to be careful with because it can really go wrong. So these misunderstandings that we talked about can happen all the time, but they do not always apply to every situation. The more you know somebody, the less people exaggerate. And then again, there's a second gradient, you could say. It depends on how like serious the topic is that you talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And then another one is that the more professional something is, the less you do these things either. I hope this helped you to understand Americans better, or vice versa, understand Germans better.
Yeah, and also I know that there's a ton more, you know, that maybe we haven't thought of. So if you have more that you've noticed in either culture, like, let us know.
And just a reminder, like, if you like this video, people like you will like this video as well, and YouTube likes to like promote videos to the right people. So help YouTube promoting this video to the right people by liking this video.
Yeah.
Only if you like this.
Okay, bye.